Mastering coaching isn't just about accumulation of more knowledge, more tools, or more techniques, but it's about deepening your understanding of the core competencies. Now, for coaching, there are various core competencies that are essential, regardless of what kind of coaching we do. Whether we are doing leadership coaching, executive coaching, life coaching, relational coaching, there are a set of core competencies that are common across various forms or domains of coaching. And so in this video series, I'm going to break down the 8 ICF core competencies and explain to you how that is relevant in your own context. So in this series, I'm going to start off first with competency number 1, helping you bring from understanding to mastery. Mastery in coaching isn't about a place of arrival, but mastery is the journey itself. We begin in mastery, we continue mastery, and we proceed and develop an ongoing effective practice as we journey in our coaching and leadership development. Now, what I want to kind of do in this series is I want to kind of break down every single component here in greater detail. And our very first one is this competency, known as ICF Core Competency number 1, demonstrates ethical practice. Now, one of the things that many coaches have asked me is, Jedi, I noticed that there is this little thing called a foundation, B, C, D. There are 4 various domains of these core competencies. Now, when ICF first established the core competencies, there were various competencies in the initial start state. But back in 2019, a review was done to update the competencies and revised it from the 11 core competencies to the 8 core competencies that we have today. And in 2025, there was an update again to ensure the latest reflection of the competency reflects what is happening in the economic landscape or what is happening in the organization or in the context of coaches globally. Now, we're going to dive in each one of these competencies in greater detail to help you understand what they are. And we're going to kind of highlight certain key elements and aspects of the competency to help you gain a better understanding of what they are. The very first one, it's the demonstrates ethical practice. So a lot of coaches ask me, Jedi, how is this different from the code of ethics? How is this different from just thinking about ethics, morality, and etc.? Well, the key word lies in demonstrating ethical practice. So you notice this word here, demonstrates. It's this active sense of demonstrating. When we think about coaching, one of the key things that oftentimes coaches face is what happens if we face a particular gray zone? What happens if we face a situation that we can't quite explain? Or what happens if we face a situation where it goes beyond the scope of our ability to kind of make a certain choice or decision? Or what happens if it veers into areas that we're very uncomfortable about? Is there a set of guiding principles that we can make a better choice, or we can stand our moral high ground, or is there a place that we can uphold professionalism and standards? Well, there is, and that's where we call ethics. Now, a lot of coaches don't spend enough time thinking, reflecting, diving deeper, or even discussing about ethics. In fact, in my program, Mastering Co-Creative Conversations, what we spend time in across level 1, level 2, level 3, from ACC to MCC and beyond, is we spend time diving deeper into different elements of ethics, different dimensions, different ethical theories, help us consider different nuances of ethics across the world, not just from a Western perspective. Consider it from the Eastern perspective, Central perspective. Consider it from different lens, different generations, different layers, or different macro or micro lenses. And this will help us gain a deeper understanding of our ethical practice. Now, notice this word here, practice, which means that we're putting ethics into our daily work. So if you're a coach, internal coach, or maybe a leader employing coaching skill sets, coaching a coach like leadership, you are also demonstrating ethical practice. Now, coaching isn't just for full-time coaches. It's also applicable for individuals, leaders, trainers, consultants, mentors, or anyone who's using coaching as one of their arsenal or one of the modalities that they're using to help support individuals, organization, teams. So coaching becomes an essential element in developing people or developing organizations, developing teams. And so this idea of practice is such a critical element here. I like this element because practice means you're active, you have currency, you know what's happening, you have a deeper understanding of what it entails, not just the knowledge bit, but also going deeper. And so that's the essential, the essence of what we're trying to do here in this video series as well, to how we go deeper in developing your ethical practice. Now, I like this key phrase here, the ICF says, understands and consistently applies coaching ethics and standards. That is the definition for how ICF defines competency number 1. sometimes referring those to CC1. So understands, consistently applies coaching ethics and standards. So what does this mean? Let's go a little deeper. The first word, understands. Now, understand is not just gaining or knowledge acquisition. It's about knowing more, knowing beyond just the sense of knowing the code. Now, there is a guiding principle of the code of ethics that's established, that's published on the ICF website. You can take a look at it or you can read it. I have a whole video series explaining more about the code of ethics. But it implies here that the understanding goes deeper than just reading or just, oh, I've glanced through. It's about taking time, reflecting on each one of those lines, understanding deeper what it means for you as coach and it means to the profession. It includes things like ethical reasoning. How do you reason through different scenarios? For example, encountering a confidentiality issue, or perhaps an issue where client requires more than just coaching. How do we kind of recognize ethical tensions when it arises? What should we do in those situations? How do we apply the best approach as a coach, as an individual, as a professional, and also being aware of different individuality, personalities, values, cultures, traditions, generations, biases that shapes our decisions. One of the key elements of competency one as we develop further, it's gaining a deeper understanding of ourselves as well, because we begin to understand how we tend to see the world. A lot of us see the world through our own lens alone. We don't quite take time to learn about the lenses of others. And in this world, in this complex and myriad world, we have to learn to also gain a perspective from another person's lens. Now, one of the exciting things about coaching, people ask me is, Jedi, why do you like coaching so much? Why do you love coaching so much? Is because I'm always in a position of a learner. I'm not in a position to teach you because the process of coaching teaches us. But the role of the coach really is an active learner. I'm inviting the client together with me to co-create the entirety of the process, exploring the unknowns, exploring the boundaries, going deeper, challenging moments, encountering insights, transforming those insights into certain sets of actions, bringing those awareness to the forefront for the client, and so helping them to kind of bring those values within. And we got to recognize that there are different values, cultures, different traditions, norms all over the world. So what is true for one may not be true for the other. And so applying sensitivity, it's very important, especially when we're considering ethics. So ethics in practice means that we also have to consider, even if people from the same culture, we got to understand that our experiences sometimes can kind of put a certain sense of biases, or we may have certain fixed mindsets about certain things. And are we able to be more agile, more flexible as well? So understanding is not just reading. Understanding is going a step further. So if you're preparing for your ICF credentialing exam, I'll encourage you to take time, reflect on each one of the words that is written down in those quotes, because a group of coaches came together to discuss, to really thoroughly dive deeper into the essence of what coaching really is. So I want you to take time to reflect on those as well. Those will really help you dive deeper as well. Now that's understands. What about the next word here, which says consistently applies? And I like the word consistently. It's not just applying, but are we able to consistently apply? Because sometimes we may forget. Sometimes we may go and do the actions that we are comfortable doing, or we may refer back to things that we are very, very familiar with and really forgetting what the essence of coaching is all about. So consistently applies is where we say, hey, you know what? When we are faced with time pressures, or we say faced with certain situations where we are pressured to take certain actions or certain tasks, how do we actually approach those, right? Do we actually take moments to take a step back? Ask ourselves, hey, are we being pressured by external influences, stakeholders, sponsors, or when the coach expertise is invited? So when the client asks us based on our expertise, certain ideas, knowledge, how do we respond to those things? How do we apply in those contexts? What about when clients are distressed, or when clients are feeling, they're not at ease and they really need something, they really need some help in those moments? How do we support the clients in those causes? So how do we apply those? And consistently reflects professional maturity, not perfection. So I like this idea. When I see someone who have established or demonstrates ethical practice at a mature level, so it's not about gaining different levels, but deepening the sense of maturity of the ethical practice, I'm able to see someone who's able to consistently apply the code of ethics or constantly apply ethics and standards in the work that they do. And it's demonstrable through the actions that they do, through how they communicate, through how they uphold their clients in positive regard, and how they engage themselves in a way that honors the coaching experience. So consistently applies, it's not just for ACC level, but across all three levels to MCC and beyond. And this is where we look at the maturity of a coach. A coach at the beginning phase of learning coaching is faced with many different things. They're learning skills, they're learning knowledge, they're applying that. As they go to PCC, they're deepening that. They're reflecting again on what those mean to them. At the MCC level, they begin to say, hey, you know what, let's take a moment to consider, who am I in this process? The who of coaching. So we go from the what to the why to the who, deepening each one of this layer and deepening our sense of maturity and mastery in coaching. The other two keywords, or these three keywords, ethics and standards of coaching, I think those are such an important element as well in coaching, because it's not just about the code of ethics, but there's a set of standards by which we uphold coaching. And this helps us anchor the distinction of coaching, therapy, consulting, mentoring, facilitation, leadership, guiding, psychology, psychiatry, and helping the client to gain autonomy. We want to give client agency. We want to give client the ownership to make a choice or informed choice of what is the best support that they need. And if the client needs support that is beyond the scope of coaching, we are there to provide them with our own thoughts, provide them with a better referral, provide them with a better understanding of which support function would best aid them in the areas that they're looking for. So it helps them to anchor, helps them to distinguish, and helps them to understand better what modality will best support them in the need that they're facing. So this is about coaching ethics and standards. Now, coaching is not about just learning a model or a framework or a technique and claiming to be a coach, but there is a consistent application, a consistent way to measure our standards of coaching. So just because I have passed an ACC or PCC or MCC level of coaching doesn't mean that I'm performing at a consistent level at that level. I may be able to just do it one time, but my standard may have dropped. And how do I kind of build that standard? How do I kind of reinforce? How do I kind of deepen that? How do I kind of push myself to grow in my understanding of coaching, to grow in my maturity and raising the standards? And to me, coaching is all about raising that standard, moving that needle. And even if, I have like 10 years, 15 years, 20 years experience in coaching, I would always like to go back to that emerging beginnings, starting all over again, revisiting coaching, taking coaching very much like learning all over again. Coaching is a learning attitude. Coaching is a learning mindset. We got to embody that. And I love that so much. So when we come to competency number 2, I'm going to go a little bit deeper in those areas. Now, next, we ask ourselves, why ethics? Why do we begin competency 1 with ethics? And why is it so critical in the coaching process? And this is where many coaches just skip past because they think about, okay, how do I do it? What am I doing? Before you think about the how, think about the what and the why. The what about coaching, it's not about rules, regulations, whatnots, do this, do that. This is not the right way to do. A lot of coaches are looking for what is the right thing to do. Rather than asking what's the right thing to do, ask yourself, is my action demonstrating the principles of doing good for the client, for the organization, for the team, for the greater good of the society at large, for the world? Is the choice of my action, is the choice of my behavior, is the choice of my responses supporting the principle of doing good to the other person? And if that is not a clear yes or no, then perhaps you may want to consider deeply. Or you may want to talk to a coach mentor or a coach supervisor or another coach to discuss deeper about what's the best way forward. At its deepest level, ethics is about discernment under ambiguity. I like that so much. It's not just about doing right or wrong. It's about discernment. Discernment comes with wisdom. And wisdom, it's where we say, hey, you know what? It's not a rule, a set of 100 case studies. This is what you should do. That's what you should do. Or this is what you must do. Or that's what you must do. No. what I sense many coaches may miss out is that when they begin to think about what is the correct thing to do, what's the wrong thing to do, they begin to form a certain boundary or certain barrier, or they begin to form a certain way of thinking about certain decisions, and that may impact their coaching altogether. You see, coaching, we have to navigate responsibility, influence, confidentiality, identity, different roles, different things that we may encounter, different situations that may not be so clean. And sometimes the same situation, but in a different environment, in a different culture, in a different context, may require different choices or a different time. So what may seem right maybe 10 years ago may have a different nuance 10 years later. Even just 1 year later may have different nuances as well. So when we apply moral philosophy and applied ethics, it's not just about compliance, it's about practical wisdom. I like the word phronesis, the Greek word phronesis, which is the capacity to act well in complex real-world contexts, making an informed decision and applying that principle of doing good for the client. What's best for the client? So think about this word, discernment under ambiguity. We will face many ambiguous situations, not just the VUCA, the Barney world, but we may face ambiguity in engaging our clients, in facilitating that conversation. But have we taken time to discern the things that we're doing? So discernment is key. And I like this idea here. Ethical practice is that moment by moment discernment practice. Ethical actions often happens before conscious reasoning. Intuition, values, and context. That is our conscious reasoning. So we kind of make different senses or different actions or different choices based on what we're sensing in those moments, how we're reasoning it out, how we're making those applications. And the coach is trained in discernment, not just policy or knowledge. And so you notice this, when coaches come into my training or come into in coaching education with me, regardless whether they're repeating level 1, level 2, or level 3, I always encourage coaches to say, hey, even if you have done ACC before, it doesn't matter. Coaching is all about learning all over again. And I've had coaches who are MCC level coming back to my level 1 classes or level 2 classes or repeating the level 3 classes. And because every session is different. And that is about mastery. Mastery is not about going there and say, hey, teach me something new, teach me something new. No, it's about deepening the practice. And you see, this is where it builds our discernment. Discernment is trained, discernment is practiced. Going through the whole process will allow us to develop a discernment, mature discernment as well, understanding that scope of practice and our duty of care as a coach, as a professional, as a leader, as someone whose responsibility for, it's really critical. And we discuss this a lot in our classes. What is our responsibility to, and what's our responsibility for in the coaching process? Think about also the language itself, because language is an ethical tool. Language, words can reduce threat, increase agency, or accidentally coerce someone. So when we say respectful language, it's not about a sense of politeness. I mean, it's not just wrapping everything up in polite words, but it's about understanding where power exists, how power may influence the conversation and connection with the client. I've seen many coaches when they try to use, well-built language, they may try to use different phrases to sound good, to sound polite, to sound respectful, but it doesn't come across as being real. Sometimes some coaches may learn empathy from a course or a skill, or may learn some emotional intelligence, but they may overly express in a certain way to the clients, and in a way that it sounds very artificial. It doesn't come across as being genuine. So respectful language, it's not about politeness, it's about understanding the power awareness. And I like that so much. Next, think about ethics in different layers as well. We have what we call professional ethics that's governed by the association or board. In this case, ICF, the International Coaching Federation, has established a code of ethics at a professional level, giving us informed consent or giving us an idea, giving us knowledge, giving us a know-how about different aspects of the code. For example, when we think about confidentiality, we think about different decisions we have to make as a professional. What documents do we refer to? So from a professional lens, I refer to the ICF Code of Ethics. I refer to the relevant laws of the land, depending on the countries, the states they're in. organization policies, regulations, etc. Your own personal professional ethics as well. So some coaching businesses may have a stringent set of ethical practice that they abide by. So bringing all these different policies, different ethical considerations into practice, that forms your professional ethics. Next is thinking about systems. Systems thinking is about thinking in terms of complexity. You have the sponsor who is paying for the coaching session. You have the client. You have the stakeholders that are at play. They are complex network of different needs, different influences, different products they're looking for, different outcomes they're looking for. How do we kind of connect with them? So that may seem invisible to the stakeholders, that may seem invisible to the organization incentives or to the individual. How do we help organizations, stakeholders, and systems see the ethics underpinning all this? In fact, one of the best practices when engaging organizations is to share with them the ICF Code of Ethics. They say, hey, I'm bounded by the ICF Code of Ethics when I'm doing professional coaching for your organization. And this is the code of ethics that I am bounded to. And let's have a discussion. Let's talk it out. Let's discuss what are the scope, what is the boundary, what are the confidentiality terms, what are the scope for us to discuss. When is there a breach? When should we use other modalities other than coaching? Think about those areas as well. And I think the third layer, it's a very practical layer, what we call behavioral economics, especially when in the coaching process, when we face with conflict of interest, we may be influenced in a certain direction. So what sounds good intention, what sounds good may be a conflict of interest. So we have to think about, hey, is there a conflict of interest happening in the process that I'm engaging my clients in? And what biases, what presuppositions, what assumptions am I taking? Or have I been influenced by such economics that's influencing my own listening ability, my own engagement ability with the clients? So think about these different dimensions as well when engaging with the clients. Next, I'm going to share with you a little case example, and we're going to talk a little bit about what went well, what could be better in those contexts. So here, a simple context when an organization sponsors coaching for a senior leader, HR asks the coach for general progress updates. So you say, hey, HR says, tell the coach, the HR is not in contact with the senior leader, you are in contact with the senior leader. And the HR asks, hey, for the progress updates, can you tell me what's happening with the senior leader? So what is demonstrated well when the coach embodies core competency number one is when the coach clearly explains the confidentiality boundaries at the contracting phase, at the coaching agreement phase. So sometimes contracting and coaching agreement are used interchangeably. So the coach refers back to the contracting agreements or the confidentiality agreements of what is to be said, what is to be shared, and also shares only what was explicitly agreed. For example, maybe it could be attendance, high-level themes, agreed upon actions. And if those areas that are not said explicitly, that's when the coach may want to support the sponsor or the HR by revisiting or getting clarity about what those areas are. And where in doubt, always invite tripartite sessions where I invite the leader, invite the sponsors, invite the stakeholders to ensure clarity, transparency. So when in doubt, I always encourage HR to go directly to the leader to ask more details and see what the leader feels most comfortable to share directly with HR. So coach can support the client to decide what they want to communicate themselves. Okay, so if it goes in the gray zone, I always say, hey, HR, sponsor, go directly to the leader, go directly to the individual, discuss with them, talk to them, what is it that that they would like to share with you in its entirety. Right. So in any case, I will always try to uphold the spirit of confidentiality. However, there are cases where I may have to breach confidentiality, where it involves any form of law of the land, or maybe any breakage, or any form of legal or criminal, or anything that may deal with any aspects of the law that's being broken. Those are moments where perhaps I need to be aware of company policies, local law of the land, anything that infringes on areas that goes beyond the scope of coaching. Right? That's when I have to let the individual know that, hey, if in the process of coaching there are contents or there are sharings that goes beyond the scope of confidentiality, I may have to refer or I may have to update the relevant authorities accordingly. Okay. Now, this will help when we think about why we do what we do. It helps us to understand that, hey, it's about helping to create that safe space for the client. In order for the client to trust us, we need to help the client feel safe. When the client feels safe, they feel that, hey, the conversation is more transparent, it's more honest, the client can open up better, and the client feels more trusted. And also that the sponsor trusts the process, which is a critical aspect of coaching. And also the organization receives authentic and ethical engagement, not just superficial engagement, but they feel, hey, this coach is transparent, this coach knows the boundaries, this coach upholds the professional context itself, sometimes even in dealing with uncomfortable conversations with the organizations. Now, when misaligned or when it's not applied properly, the coach may overly share session content to help HR. But in helping HR, inevitably, the client may feel that there's a breach of confidentiality, may feel a breach of safety. And the coach may rationalize disclosure as organization benefit, but it may create a distrust in the client or in the senior leader. And as such, when the senior leader comes to coaching again, the senior leader may feel hesitant to want to openly share in its entirety. And this impacts with when client may withhold certain information, the client may feel more disengaged, it may risk escalation or ethical risk, and coaching becomes more transactional, more performative rather than transformative. Many organizations have evolved in a way where coaching becomes very transactional, very performative. Scores, grades, numbers, give me the survey results. It becomes such transactional that there is very little space for transformation to happen. And that's where we always say that, hey, coaching has to be transformative rather than just performative. How are we impacting our clients today? Are we just engaging them in a certain level? Or are we going deeper? So think about this in the context of applied coaching. Now, as a wrap up for us today, I want us to think about these few areas. When does helping cross into over functioning? As coaches, we love people. We want the best for our clients. We want the best for our organization. We want the best for our teams. But sometimes in that zealousness, in that enthusiasm, have we crossed over or beyond the scope of coaching? Have we kind of not drawn the lines of professional context? When is it? And how do we help the client? Think about that. Think about how do cultural norms around hierarchy affect confidentiality expectations as well. So, what are some cultural differences in your culture, in another different culture, in cross organization or cross cultural settings, or maybe in different worlds? For example, you have on-site stuff, you have off-site stuff across different states, different counties, different countries, different regions, different language. Are there any norms or expectations around confidentiality? And also think about, when is referral ethically required, even if the client resists. So think about these areas, because these are areas that I feel are critical in developing a very, very solid foundation of coaching ethical practice. And as you go in this, I want you to take time to review what we call the ICF Code of Ethics and also core competency number 1 on demonstrating ethical practice. In our subsequent videos, I'm going to break down each one of the sub-competencies. We're going to spend some time diving deeper in each one of them. We're going to spend time understanding and discussing, kind of reflecting on those elements to really get a deeper understanding and grow our discernment as coaches in our ethical practice.